On October 24, 1957, 25-year-old Donald Gene Bogue, a rodeo cowboy, was arrested at the Western Hotel in Chandler, Arizona, on a charge of being drunk and disorderly. While in jail, he got into an argument with another inmate. The next morning, that inmate was dead. Bogue was charged with first-degree murder. No one witnessed the murder, but another inmate said he heard the sound of someone kicking the cell wall, and then someone say, "Shut up or I'll kill you." Bogue testified he had no recollection of that night. He pled innocent. The victim's cause of death was strangulation, but his upper body bore numerous gashes. In the end, Donald Gene Bogue was convicted of manslaughter and spent 5 years in prison. In 1966, this was the Travel Lodge here on Van Buren in Phoenix. On Friday, July 8th, 52-year-old Ivy Peterson was sitting in the office of the motel when an intruder entered and forced her at gunpoint into the bedroom where her husband, 63-year-old Arnold Peterson, was sleeping. The intruder was Donald Gene Bogue. Bogue proceeded to tie up both of them using belts, an electrical cord, and strips ripped from a towel. He then blindfolded and gagged the both of them. Bogue began to beat both victims while rambling incoherently and demanding money. He then took a knife out of his pocket and stabbed Arnold in the eye. As Arnold screamed in agony, Bogue worked it around in a circular motion. Ivy, hearing her husband's screams, yelled, which caused him to attack her viciously, beating her to a pulp and then using a belt to strangle her. Thinking she was dead, he returned to Arnold and resumed probing his left eye. Then, in a grotesque moment, gouged it out. Thinking Arnold was also dead, he searched their pockets and found a set of keys. As hotel guests began knocking on the door, Bogue raced through the room and found a chunk of cash in a file cabinet and left. Police arrived and both victims were taken to St. Luke's Hospital. They told police that the bandit had held them at gunpoint, having been beaten, strangled, choked, robbed, and Arnold having his left eye gouged out. They both survived. A total of $500 was taken. Police were able to determine that the suspect was Donald Bogue. In September, a warrant was issued for his arrest. He was going to be charged with mayhem, robbery, and assault with intent to commit murder. A few days later, police discovered he was actually already in custody in Chula Vista, California, for burglary. He had been caught August 20th and pled guilty to breaking into coin-operated washing machines. Donald Gene Bogue was brought back to Phoenix. Aside from the 5-year sentence he had received originally for the death of his cellmate, it turned out that Bogue also served 2 years in California and an additional 2 years in Arizona again for assault and burglary convictions. Investigators discovered that he lost one of his own eyes a month after the attack. Bogue wore dark glasses at the trial to hide an empty eye socket. He said, "My right eye was knocked out by some guy who had it in for me." He said he was attacked in his Burbank apartment. He had 75 stitches in his head and 35 around his eye and bridge of his nose. The trial began in April of 1967, and Donald Gene Bogue was found guilty of robbery, assault with intent to commit murder, and mayhem. According to an article in the Arizona Republic, the blood drained from Bogue's face as he heard Superior Court Judge Charles L. Handy impose sentence. Bogue was sentenced to 163 to 212 years in state prison. Donald Bogue was quoted as saying, "I expected a severe sentence, but this is ridiculous." He blamed his sentence on the judge's religion, saying, "I heard the judge was a staunch Mormon, and from what I hear about Mormon judges, they are rough on crimes involving women and kids and crimes of violence." Asked if he saw any poetic justice or retribution in his eye being gouged out, Bogue said, "You mean like eye for an eye or something like that? I don't think so, but I suppose it could be." Bogue's sentences in Arizona were to begin after completion of his California prison sentence. He began his Arizona sentence in 1975, was paroled in 1979, then charged with resisting arrest in 1980, and according to the Arizona Prison Database, he was released in 1989. He died in 2001 at the age of 67. On March 29, 1974, 66-year-old Travel Lodge night manager Dale Sechrist said goodnight to his wife Daisy while he stayed up and did paperwork in the living room apartment adjoining the lobby. At 2:40 in the morning, Daisy heard the night doorbell ring. She got out of bed wearing her slippers, pajamas, and a robe. Dale, also in pajamas and a robe and slippers, went to the desk and pushed the switch to unlock the front door, allowing entry to the lobby. Once Daisy heard Dale push the switch to unlock the door, she got back into bed and began falling back asleep until she heard. Daisy went out to the counter and found Dale slumped behind it. She called police while Dale clung to life after being shot in the chest. He was dead on arrival at St. Luke's Hospital. Police determined that Dale was held up at gunpoint and forced to take money out of the cash drawer, which was $110. At some point, he pulled out the .38 caliber revolver he kept behind the counter near the cash register and got into a gunfight with the robbers and was shot in the chest in the battle. The revolver was on the floor beside him. All 5 bullets it held had been fired. The $110 in cash was found on the counter. An employee of the hotel named Harry Farrell said the electronic front door would have locked automatically behind the robbers, which means they would have had to operate a latch to open the door when they left. A blood smear was found on the latch and outside the door. Dale Stanley Sechrist was originally from Colorado. He and Daisy moved from Arkansas and began operating the hotel the previous spring. According to those who knew him, Dale said, "Nobody's going to take any money from me. I'll shoot the son of a bitch." It was reported that when Daisy found Dale slumped behind the counter, he told her, "Go get them. They killed me." Arizona Republic reporter Richard Morin said in an article, "Ironically, Sechrist was right. Police found his body behind the desk, the money neatly stacked on the counter." Dale Stanley Sechrist was survived by his wife Daisy and a sister. He is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery in Phoenix. Daisy passed away in 1994. She is buried next to her husband. The crime went unsolved, and at the time, police were able to secure a fingerprint from the scene, a couple fingerprints actually, and determined that there were 2 suspects, one of which was most likely shot in the face and had a scar. In 1996, homicide detective Ed Reynolds of the Phoenix Police Cold Case Squad took on the case. The fingerprint taken at the scene was put into a computer and a match was made to a man who was in an Arizona prison at the time. When he met the man at the prison, he saw that he had a large scar on his face. His name was withheld because he was not being charged with any crime. He admitted to the robbery, but said that they didn't take anything and didn't know anyone had died. He said his accomplice and the shooter was named Johnny Lee Riley, who at the time was 47 years old. Riley was traced to Tacoma, Washington. When he was interviewed, he said he didn't know anyone had died. He said he didn't remember much about that night because he had been drinking, and it was, at the time, 23 years ago. At the time, in 1974, Riley was a 24-year-old father of 5 who was involved with drugs and alcohol. 2 years after the shooting, he found religion and became a minister. He said, "Someone brought the gospel to me and I saw a way out." That was in 1976, and I haven't had any problems since. Riley did become an ordained minister and preached around the country. In 1984, he became a pastor when he moved to Tacoma, Washington. He often would talk about the attempted robbery and shooting. He thanked God that his life was spared, that he didn't take any money, and nobody was hurt. In 1994, the church closed after the congregation dwindled. He then started a construction business. He said, "I never ran. I didn't know to run." He also apologized and said if he knew the man had died, he would have turned himself in 23 years ago. Johnny Lee Riley was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, armed robbery, and burglary. At the time of his arrest, he was the father of 16 children. Riley was brought to trial in Phoenix. In 1999, he was convicted of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. In 2001, Riley was released. This was because he was eligible for parole after serving a third of his sentence because that was the law at the time of the crime. Upon his release, he said, "I'm grateful that I only had to do the time I had to because of my crime. I was in there with guys who were never getting out. It was a horrific experience. God really blessed me." Over the years, the Travelodge has changed its name many times, but has continued to operate as a hotel even to this day.